Hey, what's going on, everybody? Hope you had a nice Labor Day weekend and hope you're having a wonderful day. So, today I'm going to be taking a look in this video at a channel called Hidden Worlds. And I love history, so that's what kind of drew me to this video. And this is called These Mysterious Artifacts Should Have Never Been Found. So let's see what shouldn't have been found. And here we go.
Whenever archaeologists recover a long-lost artifact from the Earth, we add another piece to the overall picture of our human history. Many objects from the past help experts to better understand the living world of civilizations that have long since disappeared. However, not every archaeological find contributes to further unlocking the ancient secrets of our species. Instead, mysterious artifacts keep turning up that pose almost unsolvable riddles to the experts. These are often bizarre or even disturbing objects whose meaning, history, or origin is a real mystery. Together with you, we would like to take a closer look at 10 of these fascinating archaeological artifacts today. Have fun with the strangest finds of the recent past. Are you fascinated by mysterious things and archaeological discoveries? Then give us a thumbs up, subscribe to Hidden Worlds, and join us on our journey.
Nice. And just so you know, guys, I will be putting a link to this video down in the description. So if you do like this kind of content, you can click on the link and go to the channel and subscribe. All right, let's keep it going.
Satanic plaque.
Oh,
The
great.
world of devil worship is as fascinating as it is chilling. When we think of Satanism, images of dark, hooded figures offering bloodthirsty sacrifices to the Lord of the Underworld in blood-curdling ceremonies comes to mind. How far back the worship of the devil goes within historiography is also made clear to us by an artifact recovered in Scotland just over a year ago. Within a remote region of Queen's Holyrood Park, 2 archaeologists came across some puzzling objects. Among them was an ancient metal tablet showing an upside-down pentagram and the image of a horned creature. To all appearances, this is the devilish figure of Baphomet, but where this terrible symbol originally came from is still disputed to this day. Particularly shocking, the terrifying satanic plaque was discovered in the immediate vicinity of a venerable royal palace. Do you think the royal rulers of Scotland had anything to do with the diabolical cult?
I don't know if they had anything to do with it, but if you dig in the ground and you find something like that, you take that to a forge or somewhere that's got a really hot fire and you melt that thing down and then just chuck it in the ocean because you don't want anything to do with that kind of stuff.
Crannog. The term crannog refers to an artificial man-made island consisting mainly of sand, stones, and tree trunks. The islands in question were often piled up in Scottish and Irish lochs, and on some crannogs the builders even erected buildings. The existence of the crannogs, whose name is derived from the Old Irish word for tree, has been known to researchers for several centuries. However, until now, experts assume that people began to heap up artificial islands in the Iron Age at around 2,800 years ago in order to subsequently use them for various purposes. However, archaeological divers off the coast of Scotland recently came across some sunken crannogs that are more than 5,600 years old. How the people of that time managed to accomplish such an extraordinary feat of construction is still a mystery within the scientific community. Maya Batman suit. The comic and movie fans among you will be very familiar with the character of Batman. In the case of the Dark Avenger, we are dealing with a superhero of a very different kind. Accordingly, Batman is not equipped with supernatural powers, but rather has to rely on his physical skills and technical aids. With a gloomy setting, a billionaire bon vivant Bruce Wayne, who is actually under the Bat mask, quickly became an absolute fan favorite. Have you ever wondered what the Dark Knight would have looked like in another era of our human history? An equally creative and aesthetically pleasing answer to this question is provided by a work of art by the Mexican designer Kimball. On the occasion of the 75th birthday of the Flutterman, the artist made a batsuit in a wacky Mayan look. Decorated with elaborate symbols and ornaments, the Batman suit appears even cooler this way.
Yeah, that's actually pretty rad, man. Like, I thought this was a legit real thing that they found, but somebody made it. But either way, it's still really cool. And in fact, there's a animated movie called Batman Ninja, which you actually get to see Batman go back in time during the time of the ninja. And some of his attire, like his suit, is, I guess, reconstructed while he's in that time period to look more ninja-esque or ninja-like. It's a fairly decent movie, but the animation is really the high point of that film, and it's really cool. So if you haven't seen it and you're a fan of Batman, check it out.
Lead sarcophagus. When Spanish archaeologists were busy with routine excavations in the center of Granada a few years ago, the experts had no idea what a sensational surprise this day would hold in store for them. In detail, the experts were working in a historical building from which they had already recovered numerous artifacts from the Christian and Muslim era of the country. However, the fact that they came across a lead sarcophagus from the Roman era in the course of their investigations was tantamount to an archaeological bang. The object, covered in mud, laying dormant in 2.5 meters below the Earth's surface, measured almost 2 meters in length and was about 40 centimeters high. Experts estimate that the coffin made of lead was laid to rest as early as the 2nd century AD. The ruins of a lost colonial tavern. The year was 1776, when the U.S. town of Brunswick in the state of North Carolina was burnt to the ground by British soldiers. After its destruction, the town was never to be rebuilt, which is why archaeologists of the following centuries had to rely mainly on recovered artifacts and old maps to trace the original image of the once vibrant colonial town. About 2 years ago, a student discovered the remains of an amazing building whose existence had been completely unknown to researchers until then. Equipped with ground-penetrating radar, the young man came across the relics of a 37-meter square building whose remains lay dormant 1.5 meters deep in the earth. Contemporary maps, however, had not listed the structure anywhere. As it later turned out, the object in question was once a tavern that also served as a brothel for its visitors. It's likely that the tavern was destroyed in a fire several years before the destruction of Brunswick. The individual objects discovered in the area in question resemble an impressive snapshot of times from long past. The researchers found the tap of a wine cask, intact tobacco pipes, and parts of cups. Other recovered objects, such as thimbles, which were mainly used by women, suggest that the aforementioned assumption that the owner of the tavern did not only offer drinks for sale at the time. High-quality jadeite tool. The archaeological find, which researchers made in the Central American state of Belize, could help to better understand the daily way of life of the ancient Maya. The experts discovered a high-quality tool made of the precious materials jadeite and rosewood. The Maya likely used objects of this kind to mine rich salt deposits in the region. Accordingly, salt extraction must have been an essential part of the people's everyday life. The raw material was not only used to preserve food, but also represented the wealth of the owner. The elaborate processing of the jadeite tool supports the thesis that salt extraction had a particularly high cultural significance for the Maya. Normally, the followers of this ethnic group used the precious jadeite to make elaborate pieces of jewelry and sacred figures. The artifact, recovered by the archaeologists, was made about 1,000 years ago and is the only known representative of its kind so far.
Sorry, my puppy is going nuts in the background. Somebody must be at the door or walking by the window. She barks at everything that moves. And she's a little 1-year-old dachshund or wiener dog, so maybe one day I'll put her in one of my videos.
Old Well on Beneki. Beneki is undoubtedly one of Scotland's most famous mountains. The 528-metre-high mountain massif has always been the subject of numerous legends, and even today the mountain attracts countless hikers and tourists. In detail, Beneki is located in the region of Aberdeenshire and is also home to a fortification from the Iron Age. Last year, some experts finally achieved a great archaeological coup. They uncovered the access to an ancient granite well, which served the inhabitants as an important source of drinking water several centuries ago. Today, the well still presents itself in an amazingly intact condition. The individual steps of the structure, which lead deep into the interior of the well, can still be seen.
It's just so fascinating, too, how people just stumble across these things. That looks like it was buried under mud and grass. Like, how do you, unless you're using ground-penetrating radar, how do you just stumble over something like that? It's pretty incredible how people find things.
Ancient Roman gold coin. Sometimes even the smallest objects have an unimaginable material value. In a field in the English county of Kent, a British amateur prospector came across a 2,000-year-old gold coin adorning the likeness of the Roman Emperor Electus. The Roman leader ruled over the then independent territories of Britannia and northern Gaul between the years 293 and 296 AD. Some experts say that Electus carried out the first Brexit in the history at the time, as he successfully carved Britain out of the powerful Roman Empire. However, the renowned ruler achieved his position through a more than questionable action by having the previous ruler murdered in cold blood. When the 30-year-old finder made his sensational discovery with the help of a metal detector, he could hardly believe his luck at first. The unique 24-carat gold coin was finally auctioned off and sold to the highest bidder, for the record sum of the equivalent of 587,000 euros.
It's also pretty incredible, too, how that 24-karat gold coin survived all this time, because 24-karat gold is actually really soft metal. So shocking that, maybe because it was buried, I'm guessing, but it's shocking that it stayed pretty well preserved. Look at that thing. That's everything's pretty well intact, in terms of the script and the image, the engraving and all that. So maybe it just got buried right away and that's what preserved it. But it's surprising that something that's 24 karat gold, survived for so long, looking as pristine as it does.
Carrowmore. Carrowmore describes an ancient megalithic site in Ireland that was likely built between the years 4000 and 2500 BC. A megalith, meanwhile, is a massive, usually unworked block of stone that has been set in a specific, often upright position. Of the estimated more than 200 original structures, 25 can still be found in Carrowmore today. The area of the site covers more than 3 square kilometers. Some of the structures in the area also have tunnel-like vaults, suggesting that Carrowmore was once used as an important burial ground. The impressive Irish site has been the subject of extensive archaeological investigation for more than 200 years, and despite this, new artifacts continue to emerge from the ground. Recently, for example, some researchers were able to discover the remains of a large circular ditch that contained numerous prehistoric tools. Mysterious shipwreck artifacts. The last archaeological find we would like to present to you today takes us straight to the coast of England. Here, researchers managed to recover some unique artifacts from the wreck of the ROSWELL. This is a Dutch ship that sank in the English Channel in 1740. Originally, the crew of the ROSWELL wanted to travel to Indonesia, which was still under Dutch rule at the time. In the course of the sinking, 350 people lost their lives. Loaded with many precious items, including a valuable silver treasure, the ROSWELL slumbered undiscovered off the English coast near the city of Dover until 1996. Because the precious objects had been lying under the surface of the water for several centuries, it's not always easy to identify the heavily rusted objects. With the help of state-of-the-art X-ray process, British scientists now want to solve the mystery of the fascinating shipwreck artifacts. The experts believe that in addition to the aforementioned treasures, numerous everyday objects of the time were also on board der ROSWELL. In addition, the investigations could help to shed more light on the silver trade in the 18th century, as the experts are taking a closer look at the origin and processing methods of the metal. The history of Samosejitusa Regia.
That's a
A
mouthful.
UNESCO World Heritage Site, Samosejitusa Regia, the capital of the ancient Dacian kingdom, is one of the most mysterious historical landmarks in Romania. Located high in the mountains on a plateau that is still difficult to access today, Samosejitusa Regia enchants its visitors and recalls one of the most significant moments in the history of the Dacians, the enigmatic ancestors of the Romanian people. Samosejitusa Regia was built in the Orăștia Mountains on a 1,200-meter high plateau and served for a century and a half as the capital of the Dacian kingdom, as well as a military, religious, political and cultural center. The Dacians lived between the Carpathians and west of the Black Sea and developed a complex civilization, highly respected at the time, which reached its peak between the centuries 1 BC and 1 AD.
That's a mouthful. Samosejitusa Regia. So, like, say that fast 5 times. Samosejitusa. That's a tough one.
Liver of Piacenza. The Palazzo Farnese is a 16th century palace museum in the northern Italian city of Piacenza. Inside is something 1,600 years older than the palace itself, an Etruscan bronze medal of a sheep's liver, which contains the entire cosmic order according to Etruscan belief. The palace was built around 1550 by the Duke and Duchess of Parma. The rooms and furnishings of Palazzo Farnese can be visited, and you can see some Botticelli and other important paintings here, but the most valuable possession is the small liver replica. The Etruscans made what is now Tuscany their center before their civilization was crushed by the Romans. They lived from about 800 BC to about 300 BC, and they had their own language, religion, and view of the universe. They also practiced a kind of haruspicy, the art of reading the future in animal entrails, especially goats and sheep. The liver was particularly sought after for this purpose. This bronze, excavated in 1877 in a field near Piacenza, dates from around 200 BC, a time when the Etruscans were already under Roman rule. The symbolism of the Black Stone. The Black Stone is an Islamic relic in the wall of the Kaaba, which is often touched and kissed by pilgrims as part of the Tawaf ritual. The Black Stone, which lies in an oval silver frame in the southeast corner of the Kaaba, is where a pilgrim's Tawaf begins and ends. The origins of the Black Stone are not entirely clear. It's set into the wall about 1.5 meters above the ground and is no longer complete but broken into several fragments of black stone. They are shiny and worn away by hundreds of years of being touched and kissed by pilgrims. The stone derives its meaning and value in Islam from its origin as a stone from heaven. There are various stories about how it was placed in the wall of the Kaaba. There have also been several attempts to remove the black stone throughout history, such as during the siege of Mecca in 683 AD, when the Kaaba was badly burnt by the Umayyad army.
Yeah, and they say that black stone too. One of my best friends is a Muslim from Pakistan, and so I spent about 4 years studying Islam just to kind of understand what he believes, or at least what the religion believes in. I'm not a Muslim, but I just kind of wanted to do that for my friend, even though he didn't ask me. And they say let's see, where is it at here? Like, this is supposed to, from somebody I was learning from, like, this is supposed to be like the shape of a vagina, basically. But they believe that by kissing these stones, that when they make that circle around the Kaaba here and they kiss these stones, that it erases their sins. So apparently the stones have, the same authority as Allah, which is interesting.
The siege of Mecca in 683 AD, when the Kaaba was badly burnt by the Umayyad army. The mysterious Gotland grooves. Scattered across the island of Gotland in the middle of the Baltic Sea are thousands of stones with strange grooves or furrows in the smooth, hard surface of the island. The grooves always occur in groups, are cut side by side and vary in length, width and depth. At first glance, it looks as if people have sharpened axes or swords on them. Consequently, the grooves were called sharpening stones, but soon researchers began to doubt their origin, as the shape and size of the grooves made them unsuitable for sharpening swords. Stone Age swords, and even those from the Middle Ages and the Viking Age, were also too wide to fit into the sharpening grooves. Another indication, or rather the non-existence of one, was the complete absence of stone axes and other weapons in the area that were supposedly sharpened by the stones. Archaeologists have been unable to recover any remains of stone axes and other remains, even in places described as true sword-sharpening workshops. Gotland is not alone in having these strange marks in granite and limestone rocks. Grooves of this kind have been found in many places throughout Europe, such as Norway, Finland, France, Luxembourg and England, even Australia and India. But nowhere else do grinding grooves occur in such large numbers and concentrations as on Gotland.
Yeah, and these actually, if you know anything about the ancient world or watch anything on the ancient world, if you look in Egypt, there's certain places where they maybe it's I don't keep wanting to say Angkor Wat, but that's over in East Asia, I believe Cambodia, Angkor Wat. But Aswan, there we go, Aswan, where the quarry is, where they make these obelisks. And you can see where they start to actually cut out these obelisks. They have these, what looks like scoop marks, almost like the stone itself, the red granite was soft at one point, and people were just taking scoops out of it with a spoon or some sort of, spoon-like, tool. It's really crazy to see, but that's what this kind of reminds me of. And what we just saw where it said they think it might be to sharpen axes or swords or something like that. Like, that's not how you would sharpen any blade. So I agree with him that he said that they figure it's not for doing that thing.
Mysterious stone in Roswell. We have all heard of the mysterious occurrences in Roswell, New Mexico. A strange stone with alien patterns could finally solve the 70-year-old Roswell UFO case, conspiracy theorists claim. The mysterious stone was found near Roswell in September 2004. It had markings and magnetic properties that are said to be of extraterrestrial origin. The location of the mysterious stone is the New Mexico desert near the infamous site of an alleged UFO crash. Conspiracy theorists believe it may have been part of the flying saucer reported in 1947. Wild theories claim it's the key to interdimensional travel. The stone itself is said to have strange magnetic properties that science cannot explain. It has also strange symbols that match the crop circles that appeared in Chiseldon, England on the 2nd of August 1996.
Yeah, and just real quick too on that stone, there's actually, if you want to go on YouTube, you can find it for that stone. The guy who actually was walking around that area and discovered that stone, he did a video, or maybe it's like a small documentary or just some sort of episode or whatever, but you can find it. It's with Giorgio Tsakoulis I forget. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. It's Greek. But he was the main guy on Ancient Aliens with the crazy hair, and he always looked orange and all that time. And I've actually met him before. He's a sweetheart. But he did, a documentary, short documentary on the stone, and they actually took it to people and for the first time ever let somebody drill into it, and they ran all kinds of tests on the stone itself and the magnetic properties, and it's pretty interesting. So if you want to find out more about that stone, you can go watch that and see what their findings were.
The mysterious Shona pyramids near Fagarash. Who still believes in magic? If you ask children, most of them would say they believe in giants, witches and fairies. There was a time when women were burnt at the stake for being supposed witches. Today, most people believe only in sober science, which no longer gives any place to the supernatural. But there is always a child in each of us who would like to discover something unusual, something magical. Why else would TV shows like Game of Thrones and Stranger Things be so successful? Romania is still a country of ancient customs, superstitions and legends. Perhaps the most famous legend is about Dracula. In contrast, we hear little about the 8 hills called the Pyramids of Shona, because their history is unclear. It's not known when they were formed and why. Some assume that they are burial sites. Other researchers believe that they are ancient cult sites. Naupa Iglesia, an Egyptian portal in the Andes. Halfway up an almost vertical gorge in the Andes, someone carved an inverted V-shaped entrance into the mountainside. The unknown person then cut the bedrock with great precision to create a flat door that leads nowhere. The same pattern appears in ancient Persia and Egypt. Added for good measure was an altar with 3 niches made of bluestone. It's no coincidence that such doors are called spirit doors or windows into paradise. A Naupa is an inhabitant of the spirit world, and as luck would have it, the false door of Naupa Huaca marks the passage of the Earth's electromagnetic currents, the very forces that are said to produce out-of-body states.
Now, just so you know too, guys, because like I said, I love ancient history, and I've watched probably thousands of hours of videos on these different locations. And you know, when you look at these doors right here, these false doors, they're extremely precise in their dimensions, and you know, I think like the variance and like the measurements from the bottom of the floor, say, to the top of the floor, like it's only off by maybe a few millimeters, which is pretty crazy if these things were all done by hand. You know, these right angles right here, it's all really precise. And same way with let's see, like this right here, when you're looking at, like, this stone is a very hard stone. You know, it's not like limestone or sandstone or something soft. These are very hard stones. So the fact that they're getting these angles right here and these right angles and doing like these double layers in a very hard stone with no power tools is what we're told. It's really a feat of masonry work and engineering that they're able to do this. And it really is a mystery. Nobody knows how or why they did it. So it's pretty crazy to think about what humans were capable of back then. Let's put it back. All right, here we go.
A Naupa is an inhabitant of the spirit world, and as luck would have it, the false door of Naupa Huaca marks the passage of the Earth's electromagnetic currents, the very forces that are said to produce out-of-body states. The very special atmosphere in this place is almost palpable. The location makes any astronomical reference unlikely, so it stands to reason that this temple was used for shamanic rituals.
And real quick too, guys, like, all right, so like this, see this right here, like these angles, they're crazy how this is just with such precision carved out of the rock. And you wouldn't know it, but this right here is actually much older than, say, this stone. It's not really stonework, it's stone construction. But this right here is the newer construction. It's the newer stonework compared to this right over here. And you would think as time goes on that the old, you know, the newer stuff would be the better stuff, when in fact it's actually the older stuff. The older, farther back you go, the more advanced, the more precise the stonework is, which seems counterintuitive, but that is actually the case. And these false doors, one thing I want to bring up too is that these false doors can be found in these different megalithic sites or locations all over the world. So it's not unique to one location. It's everywhere. And you would think that only one culture or one civilization would have come up with this stuff, but you know, there seems to be common denominators in how things, the older stuff, and how things were constructed or carved or built. You know, like if you look at some of the megalithic stonework in Egypt with these knobs on them, you'll see these same knobs in Peru or, you know, other locations in South America or Easter Island, which is an island out in the ocean, or in Asia with some of the megalithic works there. So it's pretty crazy. I think there's some sort of connection there. I don't think everybody just discovered the same building technique on their own. So I could do a whole video on that, but it's really cool.
Ethiopian obelisk. The obelisks of Ethiopia are so famous that they were stolen by Italian invaders during the conquest of Ethiopia in 1935. After years of negotiations, the 1,700-year-old giant stone obelisk was finally returned to Ethiopia in 2007. A trading city between Persia and Rome, the city of Aksum flourished in culture, power, and wealth in the 4th century BC. The city's inhabitants erected huge pillars to mark the graves of important leaders of their culture. The most famous and grandiose was the obelisk of Aksum, intricately crafted from Aksumite and rising 9 stories in height. At the base are 2 false doors carved to look like the wooden entrances to a building. The details on these doors are so complex that even fake locks have been carved into them, a remarkable testimony to the past. New technology uncovers hidden cities in Angkor region.
Oh, Angkor Wat, there we go.
Archaeologists in Cambodia have found several previously undocumented medieval cities, not far from the ancient temple city of Angkor Wat, that are believed to disprove important assumptions about Southeast Asia's history. State-of-the-art airborne laser scanning technology uncovered several cities between 900 and 1,400 years old beneath the tropical forest floor, some of which rival the size of Cambodia's capital Phnom Penh. The investigations uncovered a number of discoveries, including sophisticated water systems built hundreds of years ago before historians believed such technology existed. The findings are expected to partially refute theories about the development, dominance, and decline of the Khmer Empire in the region around the 15th century. The collapse of Angkor itself will also likely have to be reclassified.
Yeah, also too, guys, real quick, I know this is gonna be a long video, but some of the stuff is really worth pointing out, and you can always look into it more yourselves, if you're interested. Now, when you look at these structures, they're so incredibly intricate and detailed. The only thing that comes close to it in terms of the craftsmanship and the intricacy of the small, minute details and how much of it there is are the temples that are literally carved out of the mountain bed, or the mountainside, and the rock bed is one single piece in India. It's really impressive. And the name of that site eludes me right now, but it's really cool. Now, also with this walkway right here, going up to these peaks, this peak right here actually aligns with the sun on both the summer and the winter solstice, which is really cool. Not only was all that thought put into the layout of this whole location, but you also have in the craftsmanship, how ornate each of these, I guess, cone-shaped roofs or peaks of these buildings are, but the fact that they incorporated the summer and winter solstices, which a lot of ancient cultures did, into the building itself. So it's really interesting and cool. Man.
In the region around the 15th century. The collapse of Angkor itself will also likely have to be reclassified.
Look how detailed that is.
Granite figures. A strange bird-like statuette from around 5000 BC has taken Greek archaeologists completely by surprise, as they could not explain what it represented or where it came from. Described as a 7,000-year-old enigma, the statuette is now on display at the National Archaeological Museum of Athens. The bird-like artwork was carved from granite, although experts suspect that no metal tools were used to create it, as it dates from the late Neolithic period. The 36-centimeter tall figure is larger than most Neolithic statues found so far. It has a pointed nose and long neck that tapers to a pronounced round belly and cylindrical legs. Everything else, however, remains a mystery. Archaeologists speculate that she came from the northern Greek regions of Thessaly or Macedonia, but even that is only a hypothesis for now. In its history, mankind has built an impressive variety of vehicles, ships, and most recently, even aeroplanes and space shuttles. Many of these developments brought a new standard to the technological world, but many of these constructions have since been replaced and forgotten by the public. As a result, the remains of special vehicles and aircraft can be found in various places around the world, sometimes slowly falling apart, and sometimes the target of adventurers in the region. The following 10 examples are exemplary of the most incredible but forgotten vehicles that actually existed. Are you fascinated by
Now that's just a shame, man. Like, why would you purchase this vehicle? This is like a piece of movie history, and it's such a cool looking car. This is my favorite Batmobile, by the way. Why would you buy that and then just park it out in the middle of the woods and let it turn into that? Basically a piece of crap, you know, and that's really sad to see.
Mysterious things and archaeological discoveries? Then give us a thumbs up, subscribe to Hidden Worlds, and join us on our journey. Abandoned Space Shuttle. NASA's space shuttles are iconic, and while the real ones are now in museums across the US, some still being held back mothballed for missions, 6 replicas were created to demonstrate them to the world. One of these replicas was designed for visitors to enter and see the inner workings of these special works. Specifically, this model was located in a theme park on Prince Edward Island in Canada. Unfortunately, the park fell victim to the 2008 financial crisis and had to close its doors. Nevertheless, the space shuttle can still be found on the old site. Urban explorers are often seen looking at the space shuttle and taking pictures of the interior. Whether and how the replica will be seen again in a friendlier environment has not been clarified, so it could happen that it will be forgotten forever at some point. Hearse with 18 windows. Normally, hearses are not necessarily the cars you want to look at more closely, but perhaps an exception is made for this version of a hearse. Based on the original model of a 1947 Buick Roadmaster, the vehicle surfaced on social media a few years ago with photos. According to the user who first shared the photos, the car was slowly but surely deteriorating in a remote field somewhere in Greece. What makes the vehicle so special, however, is the car has been completely modified and has, among other things, 18 individual windows built into the sides and roof. In addition, it has been restored and apparently adapted to the look of the rocket age, and could thus also star in a film from the 70s. In the meantime, the rescue of the car has also been taken care of. It's been bought and will now be restored in the next few years.
I'm not a fan of hearses, but that looks pretty
Bunker
cool.
on wheels.
Oh, wow.
It shouldn't really come as a surprise that one can still find treasures from the Cold War on the grounds of a Russian military academy. But the photos of the MAZ-543, a mobile fortress, are special even by these standards. It's indeed a heavily protected bunker on wheels, probably built on the chassis of a Russian truck. With thick sheathing and the complete absence of windows, the vehicle really does look as if a bunker had simply been strapped onto a truck. The vehicles are believed to have been used to check military checkpoints. Since warfare has made it easy to destroy simple patrol vehicles, the bunkered vehicles were a way to still maintain control of an area, even if they offered very little comfort to the occupants.
That's like something you want in a zombie
Passenger
apocalypse.
hovercraft. It wasn't that long ago that the idea of hovercrafts was ubiquitous. They were described as the brand new technology on the seas. Not only did hovercrafts offer a way to move across the water in a comparatively resource-efficient way, but they were also used as ferries in some active trials. The problem is that the technology quickly reached its limits. Compared to modern ferries, they lost out, and they could not be used near residential areas. Today, the Princess Margaret and Princess Anne, 2 of the last hovercrafts to travel across the English Channel, are on the Southampton coast and almost forgotten. However, there are plans to revive the memories of this technology. Electric propulsion and new energy should not only make them quieter, but also enable them to compete again on efficiency. The largest concrete ship of all time. The GOTLAND was a Chinese cargo ship that set a record. As the largest concrete ship of all time, it was supposed to ensure the safe transport of goods. The idea of relying on concrete instead of steel or wood is not new, but very quickly proved to be impractical. The GOTLAND also ran aground in a riverbed shortly after its maiden voyage. The wreck, around which an entire city developed, quickly became an attraction for tourists. The problem? A ship made of concrete does not decay. It's immune to the weather and thus remained indestructible in the middle of the city. In the meantime, it has been gradually destroyed, and today only a few plaques remind us of this special relic and the idea that ships could also be made of concrete. Strange motorhome from 1962. The Sham Rockaway has earned a reputation as a legend in the USA. It's a homemade motorhome, a project of a couple from the USA who used two large Buick station wagons for it. It can still be seen in many photos today, and the construction phase in particular inspires hobbyists from all over the world. The extensive conversions meant that, at first glance, the car actually looked as if two cars were simply riding on top of each other, and the interior was a comfortable place to spread out and spend the nights. After the couple had traveled to various states with their motorhome, the trail of this particular piece of work was lost before it was recently rediscovered in a scrapyard and bought by a hobbyist. However, it's not known whether he plans to refurbish the mobile and make it available to the public. Ekranoplan. Among the many developments of the Cold War is something that is difficult to describe as an aircraft, a ship, or even a sea monster. We're talking about the so-called Ekranoplan. This is an aircraft that can fly at particularly low altitudes and thus use effects of physics to its advantage. The Soviets built several prototypes of this type, but they were lost in the turmoil after the fall of the Soviet Union. Now, one of the Ekranoplans has been recovered from a lake. For years, the thing lay in the Caspian Sea and was already mistaken for a sea monster by locals. In an attempt to revive the technology, the Russians have now had the plane recovered. They are planning a new approach, including using the waters in the increasingly contested Arctic Sea.
What a weird-looking design.
H-4 Hercules flying boat. Howard Hughes is considered a pioneer of American aviation and was partly responsible for the fact that the aircraft industry developed in such great strides in the 1940s and 1950s. In addition to many successful projects, there were of course also a number of failures, some of which still enjoy cult status today. One example is the H-4 Hercules, an aircraft that could not only land on water, but had gigantic dimensions and, among other things, 8 propellers. Originally, it was supposed to be built for the military, but in practical tests, it turned out to be almost completely unusable. It had trouble even taking off. Nevertheless, the flying boat was a milestone in the development of aviation and can be seen today, almost forgotten, in the Aviation Museum of the USA.
And Howard Hughes also created the Spruce Goose, which I believe was made completely out of wood. And I'm not sure if that was able to fly or not, but this seems like kind of like the next evolution of that first design. Pretty interesting.
The SS Aquarama. Originally, the SS Aquarama was built as a troop ship for the USA. Later, it was to become a very special one and the largest cruise ship ever to sail the Great Lakes of the USA. Between 1956 and 1962, the ship was underway and advertised cheap holidays and unforgettable trips between Detroit and Cleveland, where passengers could feel like real cruise guests for once. Unfortunately, the costs were too high, and between 1962 and 1994, it disappeared completely before being converted into a casino ship. Sadly, scrapping later followed, and a significant part of American transport and tourism history disappeared. Canadian houseboat. A houseboat on the Irish coast is already a bit of a curiosity, with few people making the connection between living and traveling on a boat. It becomes even stranger when it turns out that the ship seems to have traveled all the way across the ocean, namely from Canada to the Irish coast. This can only be explained if you take a closer look at the ship and the curious story behind its creation. Due to the materials used and the built-in solar panels, the boat is able to move across the ocean completely self-sufficiently. It was a project by a Canadian environmental activist who wanted to provide shelter for the homeless before the boat broke loose and began its interesting journey across the ocean, only to wash up on the Irish coast. Batmobile in the forest. The Batmobile has always been a fascinating vehicle for fans of the popular comic and film series, even if its appearance has changed over the years. Especially the classic Batmobile has been copied many times in the last decades. Now, the floor plan of one such Batmobile has surfaced in a forest, leaving one or two fans excitedly hoping for news. The story comes from a Reddit thread, and unfortunately, no additional backstory was provided as to where the Batmobile is located in the forest or why it is in such bad shape.
Yeah, that's
So
sad.
it could be that the dream of many Batman fans is waiting in a forest somewhere to be collected and restored. That was a small selection of more or less exciting and interesting vehicles that were forgotten for a long time and are now partly celebrating their comeback. Which vehicles from history do you still remember, or do you perhaps know a place where one of these treasures could be found?
All right, so yeah, that was a cool video. It was a long one, so I tried not to interject too much. But it said these mysterious artifacts should have never been found. So I thought we were going to see like something crazy. I mean, the only one that I saw that shouldn't have been found was that satanic circle metal disc thing at the beginning. But the rest was just kind of like odd things or unusual things, especially when you got to the different vehicles, the ships and the planes and the crafts and cars and stuff. Those are like odd or unusual things. I don't know if they shouldn't have been found, but finding them, you know, after so long was pretty cool to see things that people were creating in the past. So that's going to do it for this video, guys. I really appreciate your time. Thank you for stopping by my channel, hanging out with me, giving me some of your time again. And if you guys have anything you want me to check out, put it in the comments. And you enjoy the rest of your day. Take care. Bye.